What's up guys, Shindig here, and welcome to a boss guide series looking at the first raid in Season of Discovery, Blackfathom Deeps. Now I recently had the privilege of being a part of a team that managed to full clear the raid within a couple days after launch, and with that experience I want to take a look back and share some of the insight that we learned along the way. Now as a general note, I think Blackfathom Deeps is looking like an awesome first raid for the seasonal server. There are several fights in the instance with unique and engaging mechanics. I think it offers an appropriate level of difficulty, especially looking later on into the instance. I think some of the later bosses are notably challenging, but maybe if that's not your vibe and you're looking for an easier time, note that we did this raid very undergeared and missing a lot of key runes for our respective classes. So within a couple weeks, player power will definitely catch up and this raid will be made a lot easier. So looking at the first boss, we have Baron Aquanis. You will be unable to engage the boss until you clear all of the water elementals in the room. I'd also advise clearing the room of trash. There's a lot of movement on this fight, and a high probability you butt pull something if the room isn't cleared. Now the boss itself doesn't have a lot of mechanics, you're more so fighting against the environment. The first ability we'll talk about is the raid-wide knockback. So the boss will place a debuff on a random player called Depth Charge, and when that debuff expires, it knocks everyone back from that player's location. You'll notice that we have our range DPS in the water here. So the reason for this is that while the knockback seems to be raid-wide, it doesn't seem to knock upwards, in the sense that if somebody in the water has a knockback, the players up top won't get knocked. So the idea we had by pre-positioning our range DPS in the water was that should they ever be targeted by Depth Charge, they're already in a good spot to deal with the mechanic. That said, I don't necessarily think that our solution is the best solution, for the main reason that there are swirlies spinning around in the water. If you're caught up in one of these whirlpools, it will suck you down and they're constantly moving around. So as a range DPS, you're constantly having to adjust and lose out on your own uptime to avoid being hit by these things. So what might be a better solution is to either have all of your raid up on the top platform, and whenever anyone gets depth charge, that one person then jumps off and explodes on their own. Or you can have your range DPS pre-positioned on the beach at the entrance of the room, assuming they have enough range to hit the boss. This way they avoid the water completely. Do note that if you are a range DPS in the water or at the entrance of the room with a pet class, your pet may have difficulties trying to navigate to the boss. That might be something you need to set up pre-pull beforehand. Now, as the person targeted by depth charge, if you're up top on the boss's platform, make sure you jump off so you don't knock your friends, and just make your way back to wherever you need to be, avoiding whirlpools along the way, and you can swim through these balls in the water that give you swim speed. But be sure not to spend too much time underwater for the boss's next ability, and that ability is a raid-wide debuff that decreases the amount of time you can actually hold your breath underwater. Now, if you have a warlock in your group, you can just apply underwater breathing to the entire raid, and this mechanic becomes a non-issue. Outside of depth charge, the boss has two remaining abilities. The first being Bubble Beam. Apparently this boss is related to Squirtle. This ability is just a spinning beam style of attack, analogous to the laser beam on Cthulhu. To avoid it, just stay behind the boss. The beam will only hit players on the boss's level. The second ability then is called Torrential Downpour. The boss will spawn a hurricane style of animation over top a random player's head. You just want to make sure you move out of it. And that's the fight. There's actually quite a bit going on, considering this is the first boss in the instance, but none of the mechanics are really that punishing, so you have room to make mistakes and get hit by abilities as you learn the fight. So manage all of that, collect your loot, and move on to the second boss. I'll see you then.